Thanks, Judy, and thanks, Bernie. I'm really pleased to be presenting today on an update on CRL's licensing initiatives. And as we work the format of this new quarterly webinar, I know we projected this would start at 3 o'clock, but we're going to start a little early, and then you can all go off and have a late lunch if you'd like. I'd like to rile you up a little bit. This is what I will call the audience participation section, more so than the others, because we really wanted your input. As you know, CRL's activities in licensing are in direct response to members' interest, and we've been working quite extensively on developing the licensing program, but we always seek your feedback on various offers, various models, various initiatives that we're undertaking. So get your fingers near the keyboard and chat your questions or reactions to anything that I'm saying here as you go, and we'll save plenty of time for a discussion towards the end, should it merit it. So in this segment, which we hope will be a regular feature in these quarterly webinars, the segment on licensing, I will be discussing some recent activities in the areas of news licensing. Just by way of background, for those who are not as up to speed on CRL's licensing activities, just wanted to present a little timeline. We have been negotiating licenses for over 10 years now. Initially, we began licensing on behalf of the Global Resources Network programs. Judy mentioned LARP. We were supporting licensing for those programs, as well as the French language program and the German language program that were seeking access to European reference databases, ebooks, primary source collections, and the like. As we expanded out that program, we began rolling out more offers to the CRL-wide membership, and eventually extending outwards to what we call our friends and family, the closest family member of which being NERL, which is now located here within CRL's building, but also by extension any other consortia to which a CRL member belongs. So not all of our offers are offered as widely, but some of them are. So our program continues to expand and evolve, and to show successful results. Just the chart at the bottom presents the last 5 years in terms of the number of institutions participating, which is in green, and the number of offers made. These are distinct segments of distinct collections or distinct products that are being offered year over year. So that does continue to grow and show to us successful results. Success for us is something that we've worked hard to define and keep tabs on here. Our focus really isn't just on leveraging the best price for member institutions, although pricing is certainly a factor and a clear benefit to you. In fact, the mean savings for a library that participated in eResources offers in 2017, last fiscal year, was over $38,000. So that's quite a bit of savings for institutions who are looking to access collections on behalf of their patrons. However, the focus for us isn't just on pricing. It really has to do with leveraging the best possible terms of access, transparency, and allowing all of the institutions to have their say in terms of the best model for the offers of these licenses. So we pay close attention to that, and we listen to you when you express concerns or questions about any particular product or offer. Also, an important goal for our program, for our efforts, is to seek input from and share information with the community of libraries that make up CRL. We built the EDesiderata platform as an interactive space for sharing such information and seeking the opinions of the members about e-resources of interest and e-resources on offer. We aim for critical and objective analysis of products, including transparency in the terms, transparency and information about the uniqueness of the content, the features of the databases, the terms of licensing and the pricing, so that we all work on a level playing field. So we encourage you to visit EDesiderata frequently, and especially to set up watch lists for products that may be of interest. There's a feature that you'll see on the EDesiderata site called EDesiderata, where you can sign in and set up a profile for new offers or offers in a particular subject or what have you, so that you receive alerts when updates are being made to EDesiderata. I really do encourage you to log in and set up one of those profiles, and I encourage your e-resource offers or your subject specialists to do the same. In addition to our own platform, many of you may recall that we were offering CRL-wide access to the Charleston Advisor. A recent announcement that you may have missed in October of 2017, we announced all member access to the new online review service called CC Advisor. This is a successor to the Charleston Advisor, and it's a new platform offered by Choice and TCA, which enhances their earlier efforts by both organizations by creating a dynamic site that offers more than 20 new and updated reviews per month. Again, CRL is making this available to all member institutions and all staff at those member institutions. So we do encourage you to visit the site. The URL is at the bottom of the page. And to sign up, there you can see recent reviews. You can also set up alerts and lists on CC Advisor. And we're working to cross-link the reviews in CC Advisor to those in EDesiderata so that there's no duplication of effort, or in fact, where there are similar reviews, that they reference and enhance each other. So we're seeing this as a very positive and beneficial relationship for CRL institutions. So pass along the news to your staff. Returning to CRL's activities in EDesiderata, we initiated the EDesiderata Forum, which is a virtual event in 2016, as a means to allow members to exchange information and to explore new challenges and new opportunities for licensing and purchase of electronic resources. The first forum in 2016 on big data, or statistical datasets, sought to identify action items for CRL and its community to address the challenges of the identification, acquisition, and preservation of business and financial data, or public opinion and population data, and even geospatial data. The resulting action agenda, which the main bullet points are highlighted here on the screen, and were discussed at CRL's collection forum last April, for those who were in attendance, has been used actively by CRL to tailor its program. Specifically, we've been moving ahead in the area of statistical data to pursue new opportunities with existing and emerging publishers of statistical information and other types of data. We've continued to add and provide detailed assessment of these potential resources within the EDesiderata platform, all profiled under the big data rubric. And we encourage you and your colleagues to further engage with those resources within EDesiderata and provide us feedback on resources that might be of interest to your institution. Secondly, we've continued to explore partnerships with other institutions, especially non-commercial providers, that are compiling, creating, and stewarding international data. Back in April, we discussed a potential partnership with IPUMS at the Minnesota Population Center, and we continue to engage with IPUMS on exploring potential models for CRL and its member institutions to help invest in the creation and enhancement of statistical data, in particular population census data and other types of census material from other world regions. Thirdly, we've been working with institutions such as your own to assist them in leveraging to assist them in the acquisition, local acquisition of statistical data sets. And specifically in this area, in individual library dealings, we've been working with experts in the data field and with your e-resource officers and the like to exchange information about potential model license language that could be used in data purchase arrangements. This is in draft mode here, and it's being reviewed by those experts who deal frequently with the one-off purchase or subscription of statistical information. And we look to roll that out for wider community comment in the coming months. So we do encourage you to take a look at that, and once it's finalized, to be able to employ that model license in future acquisitions that you're dealing with. So, EDesiderata Forum 2017, which was held last November, focused on the challenges of news, and this is where I want to bring this back to the news licensing activities here. And keep submitting your chats here, this is great. So we focused the 2017 forum on the challenges of news opportunities for libraries to invest in the persistence of online news. The findings from that forum, which were shared on the event page, which is the URL provided at the bottom, and posted via a recent blog post from Bernie on our main website, suggest ongoing interest from the community in the area of licensing and digitization of news, especially in two main areas of focus which we've pursued. That is site licensing of online news sources and library investment in news preservation and access through digitization. The findings have encouraged CRL to pursue its own action agenda, the main bullet points here on the screen, to expand our efforts in finding models and opportunities for licensing, especially for online news that are offered via publishers' sites, along the model of that which I'll talk about, the New York Times. We also continue to engage our members and to strengthen our analysis, evaluating products and providers of online news and news digitization products. We're also expanding our support for the investment in digitization, both internally, as you heard Judy discuss, with the digitization of our Latin American news materials, and as Bernie mentioned earlier, with the legal opinion and support for CRL's ongoing digitization activities, we feel that this is an area ripe for further engagement. But in addition to just digitization of our own materials, we also are seeking to support external efforts, including both commercial and non-commercial efforts, to make news more widely available. Finally, we're continuing to evaluate and adapt our own model to address the ongoing changes in the supply of news. It was clear from the EDesiderata forum that for us to merely continue to collect a handful of microfilm print news resources as a just-in-case collection was no longer sufficient to meet today's challenges. And we need to continue to advance the community's agenda in the preservation and access to news resources through CRL's ongoing programs here. So let's return just to the idea of the online news site licensing. And as most of you know, or I hope you know, CRL has been engaging publishers in discussions for site licensing of news platforms, and we've spoken of it frequently in previous webinars and live events. The rationale for us is clear. We are no longer living in the era of print newspapers. Print is almost an afterthought to many of the publishers, and some have gone exclusively online. Publishers are increasingly turning to web-first publication. And users are expressing their preference for the digital environment and finding new ways to access and share that information. Finally, there's substantially more types of information and volume of content that are being produced online rather than in the print editions. It makes sense to us to engage with the publishers, to get upstream of the publication platform where libraries used just to receive print editions and kept them until they were replaced by microfilm, rendering them further inaccessible to users. But to work upstream and to work directly with the publishers to license the site content that they make available behind paywalls. So the New York Times was our first and flagship offer in this model, and we think that this is a moderate success, and it continues to grow in its leverage and its success month to month. We're gaining increasing traction on the participation by institutions and monetary levers that we're working with the New York Times. Here's just an update on the number of institutions that are participating. We have over 300 institutions now engaging in the academic site license. And a good number of those institutions are smaller community colleges or four-year schools, but the CRL institutions, many of them, are some of the largest ARL institutions out there. So you can see that in the FTE count, the CRL represents a large portion of the billable users that go to the New York Times. We currently provide a revenue to the New York Times upwards of $2 million, and that continues to grow year over year. So we're gaining a stronger relationship and increasing leverage with the major news publisher here, and we continue to explore new ways that we can work with the New York Times in engaging in the academic pursuit of news. That is, making sure that the resources are maintained and continually accessible, looking at ways that they can further engage with campuses in the promotion and use of that news content, and opening up a wider variety of content from their own site. Still, we acknowledge, of course, that this is there's a high bar for participation in this program. Notably, the financial arrangements are challenging for some institutions, especially those with a large student count. And we know that there always will be ongoing challenges in making the news publishers more library friendly in their academic offering. We continue to seek your feedback and ideas on how we can approach them. What are the most important issues to you in this? And we look forward to hearing more about that as we continue to engage the New York Times in conversation. More recently, we announced an offer for the Wall Street Journal. This offer was negotiated in response to strong member interest in additional sources, and in particular, the Wall Street Journal. As most of you know, the Wall Street Journal is exclusively behind a paywall, whereas the New York Times and other news publishers may offer limited views per month. The Wall Street Journal is exclusively behind the paywall. This business-intensive newspaper actually has a wide variety of content of interest to sectors of the population on campus well beyond the B School. So a number of our members sought a solution to make this available on a more wide basis, in fact, a campus-wide basis. And we began to engage the Wall Street Journal in this conversation through our senior advisor for licensing, Ann Okerson. This has been a painfully slow and time-consuming process, but we were very pleased to get to the point that we could release and make available this offer to CRL membership. The offer is similar in its model to the New York Times academic site license, in that it's primarily FTE-based. But the offer structure is far simpler, and it's a bit more transparent, I think, than the New York Times rate card would suggest. There's a tiered rate by FTE participation. The higher the number of FTE, the greater the discount on the per user fee is. Still, we understand that there's some challenges in terms of the finances to this. From the funding perspective, the rates start off around the same pricing for the New York Times, although the rate card doesn't expand quite as large as the New York Times does. So there are some savings to be found. There's also some idiosyncrasies in the licensing, especially around the user registration. A lot of that is described in the review for the Wall Street Journal offer on EDesiderata, and I'd be happy to talk more about it if we have time. And of course, there's no explicit preservation commitment from the Wall Street Journal. In fact, there is access to the article content all the way back to 1997 on their site. Although they don't widely advertise that, it can be found and used. However, those who are interested in the e-print version of the paper, or perhaps a PDF rendering of it, the Wall Street Journal does not offer that as a significant benefit. There is a 90-day archive of that in an e-reader format, but it may or may not be exactly what you found on your doorstep that morning. For those, you have to go to the historical archive that's offered through ProQuest, historical newspapers. So there's great complementarity between these. But the WallStreetJournal.com offers a wide variety of content that's not available in the print, as we've discussed, including video, market reports, analysis tools, special membership through the WSJ Plus, where you get additional features and content. And so there's a lot to be said for this offer. We put this offer out in the fall, and we haven't received a whole lot of feedback from among the members. The institutions that did express their interest in this offer have also said that the pricing has been a challenge for them. So we'd like to hear during the feedback session what you think about this offer, what kind of pricing would work for you, and how can we perhaps improve this offer as it goes. However, I do want to just touch a little bit more on the second part of our licensing focus in news, which is investment in news access and preservation. It's somewhat florid language, I think, for investing in digitization projects, although not exclusively so. During the EDesiderata forum in November, Eastview Information Service provided some details on an emerging program that they're rolling out called the Global Press Archive. This is a multi-year campaign on behalf of Eastview to digitize a large body of content. They represent it to be more than 2,500 titles and upwards of 40 million pages of content from regions worldwide. Information on their site continues to be a little less specific than they want. This is why we haven't actually put out an offer. But the details of the arrangement for the Global Press Archive, as they described it and as we've had in discussions with them, we know that the content is primarily sourced from the vast newspaper collections acquired by the Hoover Institution at Stanford University. It has been maintained in print for decades. They were looking for a solution for complete digitization of their collections, and Eastview is using that collection as the spine of the Global Press Archive. But they're really looking to roll it out well beyond Hoover's own institutions. So they're looking to create full runs of newspapers that are held there, to augment titles that are held by Hoover with complementary materials that match the geographic location or the era, in order to roll out a much larger product and a more complete collection. They're focusing intensive efforts on rights evaluation and rights clearance for those materials. Most of the Hoover's collection is a 20th century, mid to late 20th century collection. And so a lot of these materials are not instantly publicly domain materials. So they're investing a lot of effort in prototyping ways to clear the rights for the material or negotiate rights with current publishers if they still exist. So they've bitten off a large chunk here, and they're looking to figure out ways that they can roll this out in a way that is friendly to the libraries that would be the clientele for this. So they're very conscious, I think, of the pricing demands that a 40 million page content could be, especially for library budgets, if they carve these out of perhaps the area studies budgets. So they're looking for models of rolling this out. They're predicting that they're going to roll out different packages, which would generally be grouped by geographic region or even time periods within geographic regions, and that they'll do that on a fairly consistent basis over the next 10 years so that it doesn't impact one particular area of the collection budget more heavily than others. However, that publication schedule has not generally been published. They're continuing to look at ways that they can put these materials together, and partly that's dependent on the rights clearance. So there's still some uncertainty as to exactly how this product is going to be rolled out. So we think that it's ripe for us to step in and help in this negotiation. And we're wondering if you feel the same. This is why we had them present at the EDesiderata forum. But we continue to discuss this initiative with them and explore how CRL and its members can be engaged in the planning of the Global Press Archive. Some of the areas that are possibilities, and we'd like your feedback. I mean, first and foremost, to be a licensing partner, I think that's a clear benefit to our institution. So that would be something at minimum. But what other ways can we engage and help steer this program? Should we be more in the driver's seat of this with Eastview? That is, can we help in the prioritization and guidance of the types of collections that are most important to the member institutions? Should we be helping them coordinate those priorities? Should we also be involved potentially in figuring out a pricing scheme that would make sense to most institutions? We've heard that there are people who are, of course, interested in this content, but not so interested that they're willing to sacrifice their budgets from other areas in order to put this material together. So how can we help guide Eastview and the community together in planning out the costs of this long-term program? Should we also be involved in sourcing some of the material of interest? As you know, CRL's news collection is one of the largest, and certainly the largest shareable collection of materials in the world. And a lot of our materials complement those that are held by the Hoover Institution. Should we be working with them on framing out larger collections and more diverse collections? Should we be working with our member institutions to help coordinate the content sharing with Eastview on this program? What other areas might we be involved with them? Could we focus on exclusive product creation, which is a possibility? That is, instead of connecting it to certain areas within the Global Press Archive, should CRL be working with them on our own products. And that might even include open access products. They've expressed an openness to considering that, and they've had a model with the Hoshi Shimbun project that they did that has a hybrid open access and commercial component. So we're really interested in your ideas on this and how we can roll forward. Most of all, what more information do you want to get from them, and how can we communicate that most effectively with you? So we'd love to hear from you about some of these efforts. I've put a few of the guideline questions that you might choose to address here on the site. Is the site license model working for you? Does it scale? What can we do to improve our approach? We'd be really interested in your feedback on this. And if cost is the principal barrier, what kinds of costs would be acceptable to you? We can certainly work to negotiate prices downward, but we would need some assurance that that would result for the publisher in an uptick of institutions that would be participating. So we're interested in your thoughts about that. What other cost models would you like us to consider in discussing this? Of course, we certainly can't guarantee any particular successes with them, but we would be more than game to take on the New York Times on your behalf in order to improve this offer for all CRL institutions. On the digitization side with the Global Press Archive, I've already thrown out a whole lot of questions, but is there interest from your institution's perspective? And how should we be engaged on this program? Can we find a model that will both sustain this effort and constrain the costs on behalf of the institutions? And finally, maybe some questions about what other opportunities are out there that you want us to explore. These are all what we've identified thus far are areas where clearly we've had some guidance from the members, but what other material are you looking to access, and how can we help you doing that? Where do you want to see CRL's energies directed? So I'm going to just wait a second and allow some of your thoughts to sink in and put this out there. Great. One comment that came in was, in the investment in large-scale programs like the Global Press Archive. One of the members said it's really important that these initiatives will eventually result in open access. I think that's a really important point. The commercialization of library collections is something that we've heard concern from among our members for quite some time. This person suggests that they would be happy to help pay for an exclusive access for a period of time, but that content should not be locked up from the world forever. So there needs to be some guarantees that the content will revert to open access, especially if it's coming from library sources.
Can you talk about how we might do that? What kind of arrangement with Eastview would be?
Well, I think that that this is certainly something that we think is important. Eastview is not a charitable organization, so they would need to be persuaded by this. But I think certainly representation from the members on this would be an important piece of this. I guess the possibilities here are, or maybe even some questions, is the commitment on Eastview's behalf to open this up? Should they eventually make this open access on their own platform, or should CRL or some other organization be a steward or guarantor of those files, receiving the files like we are with the World Newspaper Archive, and having the ability to put those up as open access in the fullness of time? Here's a question about, just a clarification about the Hoshi Shimbun project from Eastview. I'm not going to be able to pull all of this off the top of my head, but this was a collection of Japanese-American newspapers that was at Berkeley, I believe. And there was a funder that was interested in making some of that content accessible. In fact, Eastview put together a large collection of those, some of them in cooperation with current publishers from Japan, and some from California, I believe, that are still publishing, in order to make a segment of those newspapers available, whereas the latter part of it was closed access. And so there was, I think there's a mix of models within a single platform. Some of the materials completely open access, some is closed only to the source institution, and some was available upon a subscription model with the original publisher. So it was an interesting hybrid model and a platform that allowed some of that granularity of access to make that available. I'd be happy to report out further on that personally if you had that question. But I think it's an interesting model to consider. A lot of our collection initiatives with the World Newspaper Archive were hampered by the copyright, especially for those with the current publishers. And we wanted to explore models of ways that we can make that content more widely accessible and eventually openly accessible. It's a complex model for sure, and I think Eastview has drawn an interesting model here. There's a question about the scalability of the New York Times, Wall Street Journal model. And I assume that means scalability beyond just those two titles. Does the academic model extend beyond some of the top institutional, the top newspapers of this country or even any country? I think that's a good question for anybody here. Especially as we look to make sure that this pricing is right, I think that we found that there was resistance both with the Financial Times offer that we made last year and the Wall Street Journal offer that we've made this year, is that there is interest in that content. And we've heard clear desire from among our members. But at the pricing model proves a little bit of a hurdle. So I don't know. Does this scale to you? Are there other newspapers out there that you would like to see accessible, and under what kind of terms? Should we be negotiating a flat rate or perhaps based on actual users rather than potential users? I'm wondering if anybody has any thoughts out there. So I have a separate question that came in related to the EDesiderata Forum 1 about the data sets. We heard some member interest about reflecting back, on some of the challenges of purchasing these data sets. In addition to the terms of the licenses, which often prove quite challenging, they found that the pricing of those data sets were quite prohibitive, especially for the limited use that they could be used for. Often these are negotiated for a single faculty use or a limited purpose within a group on campus. And the library is facing some challenges about how could they purchase this for a more liberal academic use than the original intent. And I think this is a real challenge of that data and that model. I think at this point we're entertaining the ideas about CRL potentially centralizing some data acquisitions. At the moment, we don't really have a sort of a repository that would really make that available and accessible, but we're very much open to doing that, perhaps in partnership with another institution that does have that. But at this point, we've been putting our efforts thus far, I think, on working on some of that model language that institutions can use, but we'd be interested in your feedback. Bernie, do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I wonder if I could just add to that. A number of the libraries that we've been talking with have asked if there's something CRL can do in the way of helping with the purchase of data sets for local use or for the local organizations or collectively purchased data sets that could be shared. It's not clear that we could. The need for data sets tends to be relatively specialized. I mean, in different researchers in different fields need different types of data sets and even need different terms for use. So I think that more likely what CRL might be able to help with is helping with language for that the individual libraries can use in their own dealings with the vendors of the big data sets. We're talking about larger data sets like digital satellite imagery and large financial data sets, large social media data sets, that kind of thing. It seems that the uses are so individualized that doing much on the collective level in the way of actually acquiring them might not be that productive.
And of course, if there's any sets of resources that are emerging that you think are of widespread, that is, a broad CRL membership use, we'd be interested in hearing about those too. Well, I think we're about out of time. So I do encourage you to get in touch with me later, or any of the presenters on theirs. If you have questions or thoughts, or any of your colleagues do, please reach out and contact us by email or post comments with any Desiderata. We welcome all those, and we're as responsive as we can be to any of your questions and comments. So thanks so much for this opportunity, and I will see you in 3 months' time.